Welcome to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here because we're setting the stage for a truly cinematic historical journey. We're going to freeze time, zoom all the way out, and look at the exact moment Jesus was born. We are going to see exactly what the globe looked like while this singular world-changing event was taking place.
Okay, let's dive into this. It's so easy to picture the nativity story in a vacuum, right? A child being born in utter obscurity, hidden away in a cave in Judea. But while that quiet moment was happening, the rest of the world was absolutely buzzing with massive, interconnected global events. The contrast between this hidden birth and the sprawling global machinery operating at that exact second is absolutely fascinating.
Section 1. Empires of the Ancient World. Rome, Persia, and China.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the staggering scale of it all. If we look at the political landscape of the ancient world right at this time, we are looking at three major superpowers holding the entire globe in their absolute iron grip. Talk about political madness, assassinations, and betrayals happening all at once. In Rome, you've got Caesar Augustus enforcing the Pax Romana, keeping peace by the sword all the way from Hispania down to Egypt. Over in Han Dynasty China, there's this massive empire of 60 million people controlled by a ruthless, calculating regent named Wang Mang, who is busy pulling strings and poisoning his rivals. But the wildest story? That's got to be the Persian Empire. Queen Musa, who was originally an Italian slave given as a diplomatic gift, actually poisoned her brutal husband so she could take the mighty Persian throne and rule this Eastern superpower.
Moving on to Section 2, the Web of Global Trade, or the Highways of Antiquity.
So, transitioning from ruthless imperial politics, how did these massive, ambitious empires actually hold themselves together? Well, the answer is roads. Under the command of Caesar Augustus, Rome wove together a staggering 50,000 miles of paved Roman roads. To put that massive number into perspective, that is enough stone highway to literally circle the earth 5 times over. It was a masterpiece of engineering designed strictly to control the world.
And Rome definitely wasn't the only one building on a massive scale. By the year 1 BC, the Great Wall of China already stretched an incredible 3,700 miles. It was a massive serpent of hand-stacked stone and earth designed to protect the Han Dynasty from northern enemies.
And this brilliantly illustrates the mind-bending contrast of the era. On one hand, you have these incredible global superpowers, 50,000 miles of Roman roads, 60 million people in Han China. And on the other hand, Nazareth, a tiny, completely obscure village with a population of barely 300 people, which is exactly where Jesus would ultimately grow up.
But hey, don't let that tiny population number fool you into thinking Jesus was isolated. Just 6 kilometers from Nazareth, which is really only about an hour's walk, ran the Via Maris. This ancient highway hooked directly into the massive 8,000-kilometer Silk Road network. This was literally the internet of antiquity. You had Chinese silk moving west, stuff so valuable the Roman Senate tried to ban it just to save their gold reserves. You had Indian spices and Arabian incense crossing endless deserts on camel caravans. And moving east, you had Roman glass, Babylonian astronomy, and vast ideas like Buddhism spreading right across borders. Jesus grew up watching this vibrant global trade pass right by his doorstep.
Which brings us to Section 3, a world searching for answers, global spiritual hunger.
Because it wasn't just physical goods traveling these massive roads. Invisible, philosophical questions were echoing everywhere. The whole world was experiencing a profound global spiritual hunger. Let's take a quick tour around the globe, shall we? Humanity everywhere was searching for answers about life, death, and meaning. In Judea, Judaism was eagerly waiting for a prophesied Messiah after 400 years of prophetic silence. Rome and Greece worshipped powerful, unpredictable pantheons of gods. In Persia, Zoroastrianism wrestled with the cosmic battle between good and evil. In India, millions followed Hinduism and Buddhism, seeking wisdom and release from suffering. Over in China, Taoism and Confucianism taught harmony with nature. Up in the forests of Europe, Celtic druids called upon unseen forces. And all the way across the ocean in the Americas, totally unknown to the rest of the world at the time, civilizations like the Maya were building monumental pyramids at El Mirador to track time and the stars. The entire world was searching.
And that brings us to a very specific group of searchers from Persia, the Magi. Now, despite popular images, these guys weren't actually kings. They were high-ranking astronomer priests and men of science. They had been tracking a rare planetary conjunction in the sky, likely Jupiter and Saturn, and their scientific and spiritual calculations led them all the way to King Herod in Judea, seeking a unique, prophesied king.
Section 4, the Galilean Carpenter, An obscure beginning.
Let's zoom our narrative completely back from the global stage, right down into Judea. We're focusing now on the child born in Bethlehem who, after a brief escape to Egypt, funded by the very gold those magi brought, would eventually emerge from 30 years of profound obscurity. His public ministry began in the most geographically striking place possible, 430 meters below sea level. Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River, which is literally the lowest land point on the entire planet. From that lowest point, he was led straight into the vast Judean wilderness for 40 days of intense fasting and isolation.
When he emerged, his 3-year ministry began. He traveled extensively throughout Judea and Galilee. He brought a deeply needed word of hope to the desperate. According to historical narratives, crowds gathered, and the miracles began. The texts record him bringing sight to the blind, healing a Roman centurion's servant from afar, and performing highly public, defiant acts, the most shocking of which was reportedly raising his friend Lazarus from the dead after he had been in a tomb for 4 days.
Section 5. The Spark of a Revolution. The final 24 hours.
Now, we are really accelerating the pace here. As Jesus heads to Jerusalem for the Passover festival, he turns his final week into an absolute masterpiece of provocation. This is the spark of a revolution. Let's walk through the ticking clock tension of the Passion timeline. It starts at nighttime with a betrayal in the Garden of Gethsemane by one of his own for just 30 pieces of silver. What follows pre-dawn is a rush of 4 entirely illegal, rule-breaking trials before high priests and the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. The very same crowd that had shouted Hosanna just days earlier turned on a dime, shouting crucify him, when they realized he wasn't the political warrior they wanted. By 9 a.m., he was nailed to a cross at Golgotha, a brutal punishment specifically reserved for rebellious slaves and enemies of the state. And at 3 p.m., the sky went dark.
And he breathed his last, uttering the words, "It is finished." But crucially, according to historical sources, his followers did not view this as a defeat. The accounts insist they didn't take his life. He gave it. This execution was actually reported as the exact, deliberate purpose for which he was born.
So the crucial point is this absolute historical anomaly. Think about it. The universal rule of revolutions in the ancient world was simple. Kill the leader and you kill the revolution. The Romans were experts at this. Look at Judas of Galilee. The Romans executed him and his movement just vanished into thin air. But the Christian anomaly completely shatters that logic. The leader is publicly, brutally executed, yet the movement doesn't die. It actually goes on to conquer the very empire that executed him. The source notes that just 50 days later at the festival of Pentecost, 3,000 people were baptized in a single day. Utter fear turned into unshakable courage. The historical narrative records 40 days of resurrection appearances prior to this, giving his followers the absolute conviction to utilize those very same 50,000 miles of paved Roman roads we discussed earlier to spread this message to the far edges of the known earth.
Which leaves us with one of the most provocative historical mysteries of all time. How did 12 completely ordinary men, fishermen and tax collectors, manage to conquer the mighty Roman Empire with absolutely nothing but their words and their faith? It's a staggering reality that literally split history in two, and one that absolutely invites you to keep questioning, keep learning, and dig deeper into the incredible forces that shaped our world.